Hey guys, we're gonna start lesson 2. Alright, so you're looking at the source code. Go ahead and copy that, highlight it, copy that. Go ahead and open a new tab in your browser and type in validator, V-A-L-I-D-A-T-O-R, press enter. And hope first thing that comes up is the W3C markup validation service. When you're first starting to learn HTML, this can be really useful to you. So we're going to validate by direct input. So go ahead and click in that text field, paste in your HTML from the source code, click check, and it's going to basically highlight any errors that we may have. And look at that, I have an error and 2 warnings. I'm only going to be concerned about the error at this point. One thing I forgot to show you is you want to close that HTML tag. So we had opened the HTML tag here, but I inadvertently forgot to tell you how to close it. So make sure you close that and then revalidate. And there we go. So now our HTML document is valid. You can read on this website more if you want to understand what that means. For our purposes, we just want it to be valid. Okay. So let's go ahead and back into our HTML document, add some more stuff. So underneath our heading, and at this point I'm going to say welcome to Adam's blog. I'm just going to change that. And if you do a P tag, stands for paragraph. Excuse my typing. Okay, so we did the P tag. Paragraphs are neat because, well, I'll just show you. Go ahead and do 2 paragraph tags. Say this is the second para. Save that, and then if you go back into your Google Chrome, close the validator, close the source code. What's neat is when you're just developing HTML files, if you just give it a refresh, it will automatically update. So as long as you keep that file path the same. So you can see here, P stands for paragraph. This is the second para. But what's neat about the paragraph tags is it adds that spacing that you'd expect from paragraph line breaks. Say you wanted to do a smaller line break, something we can do. Dreamweaver's too smart for me over here. In Dreamweaver, if you hold Shift and press Enter, it inserts the BR tag, and the BR tag is basically going to put a line break into your code. And it's a self-closing tag. So with our paragraph tag, it has a start and a close tag, just like everything else we've looked at so far. But the BR tag, it closes itself, so make sure you add that close tag. Oops. Second line in second para. Okay, save that, launch that in Chrome. So you see how that adds it to the same line. So I'm really just going to cover the HTML that I use almost every day. I mean, just knowing the essentials is really going to get you pretty far. So we've done paragraphs, we've done headings. I guess with headings, something important to note is that tons and tons and tons of different headings. If you have an H2, that's going to be a little bit smaller. And headings are useful for organizing your file into logical sections. Okay, let's give that a refresh. So you can see each time you do a lower level heading, it gets a little bit smaller, and eventually it gets to the point where it's silly. If you're using an H6 tag, there's no point to use an H6 tag. Okay. You can see the H6 tag, it's actually smaller than the regular text. Anyhow, let's look at writing hyperlinks. So I'll start a new paragraph, and this is and I'm going to type hyperlink on its own line. Because if you recall, I mentioned that it doesn't really recognize white space more than one character. So I have all these spaces, and this is on its own line. But if I save it, launch it in Chrome, give it a refresh, it still shows up in its own line. Okay, so our goal is to have a hyperlink right here on the word hyperlink. Pretty simple, right? So first thing we need to do is get a hyperlink. So I'm going to go to Google. I'm going to say hyperlink. Okay, click that first option. So here we go. We're on Wikipedia. Look at that. Wikipedia starts off with an H1 tag, but we're going to copy that hyperlink, go back into Dreamweaver, and Dreamweaver does have the ability to insert a hyperlink through its WYSIWYG if you go to Insert and then Hyperlink, but we're going to handwrite the code because you need to memorize the paragraph tag, the body tag, the HTML tag, all the heading tags, and this tag, it's the A element. So you type left bracket A and write HREF. Stands for Hyperlink Reference. Okay? Immediately followed by that, you have an equal sign and a double quote. You go ahead and paste in that hyperlink, close it with a double quote, close it with a right bracket. And then what we're going to do is enclose the word hyperlink in the A element tag. So at the end of hyperlink, you're going to close that A element, okay? Alright, so now if we save the file and give it a refresh in Chrome, look at that. This is a hyperlink. And then when we click on it, it goes to that web page. Okay? Another thing you're definitely going to want to memorize is target. Target equal. So by default, you saw it opened up in the same tab. But if we change it to target equal double quote underscore blank, it's going to open up in its own tab. Okay? So I'll give that a refresh, and now you'll notice when I click the hyperlink, it opens up in its own tab. So that's not really a best practice. Honestly, when you open things up in a new tab, it breaks the back button right there. However, sometimes, depending on the organization you're working in, it's required that if you're linking to an external page that you open it up in a new tab. So it's really good to know. And then in this video, the last thing we're going to look at is embedding an image. So images are kind of complicated because in HTML documents, they're completely embedded. They're never attached to that HTML file. So here's what I mean. We'll start off by finding an image we want to use. So I'm back on Wikipedia, and okay, let's say we're going to use that image. So I right-click on it, and I go to Copy Image URL. So if I paste that image URL right here in my URL address bar, press Enter. So this is the direct path to that image. And I'm glad that this is a bit bigger because you'll notice here you can see a 500 pixel wide image. However, on the web page, they scaled it down to, it looks about like 350 pixels. Okay, so go back into your HTML document, and you see I opened up a new paragraph. What you're going to do is you're going to start the tag and type in IMG, stands for image, and tons of things you can do with images, but definitely memorize this, SRC. Okay? And then, just like the hyperlink, it's equal double quote, and then within the double quote is the path to the image. For some reason that did not copy the entire path, doesn't look like. Copy image URL, paste that in, because images typically they're going to end in PNG, .jpg, or GIF. Okay, So make sure you get the entire path of the image. Okay, there we go. So end that with a double quote. Make sure there's no extra spaces. And image tags, just like the BR tag right here, they self-close. So outside of the double quote, you want to do a / and a right bracket. Go ahead and save that, and then go back to your file, give that a refresh, and you can see that that image is now embedded right here. This isn't really a best practice. You're not supposed to embed images from other websites because it's taking up bandwidth on their servers, but Wikipedia is a big company, they'll be okay. At this point, we're going to scale this down a little bit. So I mentioned that the raw image, it's outputting to a 500 pixels. What we can do is there's different attributes for different tags. So target blank, that was an attribute for the A element, but for this one we can change it. You can see Dreamweaver kind of points out all the different things we could do, but I'll tell you the few that you're really going to want to get locked down to memorization. One is border. Okay, so by default there's no border on an image. So if I type border equal to 1, save it, launch it in Chrome, give it a refresh, now we have this thin black box around our image. But check this out. If we copy, if we copy this A element and enclose our image in it, and then refresh it in Chrome, now it has a purple thin black box. Sorry, a purple box enclosing it. And that kind of, most browsers implement hyperlinks on images this way to make it stand out that, hey, this is an image. So now when we click on it, it opens up in its own tab. But oftentimes on images, you really don't want that box. So what you can do, as you can see, if I remove my border equal to 1, and just so you know what the 1 means, if I change that to 10, save it, give it a refresh, you'll see now we have this thick border. But the only way to get rid of that border is to change the border to 0. Okay? So change that to 0, click Save, refresh it in the browser, and now we have the image with a hyperlink, but it doesn't have a border. The other thing you're going to want to memorize is scaling images. So ideally, you'd scale an image to a smaller size in an image manipulation program. But sometimes you're pressed for time and you just want to get it done fast. So what you can do is you can modify the attribute. So there's an attribute called width, and you can make that, so we know it was 500, but let's say this is 350 pixels. Okay? And I can save that and reload it, and what's going to happen is it's smaller, but it's only smaller on the width. It didn't scale it on the horizontal. So what we need to do is figure out how much we want to scale that image. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. This is a bit complicated. What you want to do is first figure out the exact dimensions of that image before it was scaled. So we can do that by opening it in its own browser. Whoops. Copy image URL. Okay. So we're just looking at this image. I don't think I have it installed here, so I'll show you a cool add-on. It's called Measure It. And I'll go to Google, type in Measure It, add on Chrome. There it is. Okay, so I'm going to install that extension. There it is. So now we have this cool little Measure It function within our browser. So when I click on this Measure It tool, it lets me highlight specific regions in the web browser, click and hold down the click button, and basically you can see it's telling me the dimensions of whatever I'm highlighting. So this is 485 wide by 213 high. Okay, so I'll copy that. So, and this is a good point to point out comments in HTML. A comment, oh, it didn't copy unfortunately, so I'll just have to remember it. 480 wide, 213 high. Okay, so comment in HTML, it's basically like a, hey, person who wrote the code or other developer who's viewing my source code, this is important. It's a way to either organize your code, or you could also use it to, you know, just to highlight things that are important, but you don't want it to interfere with the interface on the actual web page. So we have 480 pixels wide by 250 high, and we know we want to scale it to 350 pixels. Alright, so what we're going to do is start to type in the attribute for height. But Dreamweaver's a genius. It's going to automatically calculate it, but if you're like me and you don't use Dreamweaver a lot, you're going to want a fast way to calculate this without writing it down on pencil and paper. So here's what I do. I go to Google Chrome. Sorry about that. We got MAMP pulled up, getting ahead of ourselves. But go ahead and type in proportion calculator. The first option that came up for me didn't work too well, but this one worked great. www.mathematics or www.basicmathematics.com. So click on there, and pretty cool. All we're going to do is put in the values we already have. So we know that we're trying to figure out the height because we already have the width. That's 350. So we're looking at the original height was, or the original width was 480, and the original height was 215. So type those in, and this is going to automatically generate the value for our height. So you can paste that in. Looks like I was wrong actually when I said that Dreamweaver is going to pull in the height. It's actually pulling in the height of the original image. So this is a good lesson that you want to actually know how to calculate the scaled back image. So I'm going to round up, so I'll change 156 to 157, type in px for pixel, and I'll go ahead and save that and just relaunch it in Chrome and make sure that's scaled. So it didn't really look too bad, truth be told, without scaling the height. If I get rid of that. But you will notice as soon as I click refresh that this is going to go from, you know, proportional to improportional. Okay, so this is really the essentials. If you can't memorize these, you're going to be in trouble, because from here on out it starts to get more complicated. From here on out, I don't know if you need to memorize, but you need to understand the concepts and be competent in writing them by referencing other people's source code. Okay, so you're starting to get started in HTML, and we'll pick up later in another video.